So, Berto, have you seen the Han Solo movie? Have you seen it?
Yes,
Would you like to talk about it?
I would. Or should we do it solo or duo?
Let's do duo.
Okay.
Let's do a duo solo.
Okay.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. And when I was growing up, Luke Skywalker was my favorite character. Berto?
Yeah, you know, when you were growing up... Oh, wait, am I supposed to introduce myself?
Yeah.
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and when I was growing up, my favorite character was Han Solo. But I didn't realize that Luke Skywalker got his name because one day he walked in the sky.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so was Han really your favorite character?
Yeah.
Really? No, yeah. Luke was by far my favorite character. I think I grew up really just liking virtuous, lawful, good characters, you know? People who were like, that's why I think I was really attracted to Paul McCartney over John Lennon. I mean, I certainly love John Lennon and love his songs, and George Harrison, even Ringo. But there's something about the sweet guy that I always wanted to be like, I think.
Well, you know, what's interesting, obviously I had a lot of affection for pretty much all the characters, of the main ones anyways. And I had several of the toys and things like that. The thing that really nailed the coffin shut for me was the Han Solo outfit in Hoth. I thought it was so cool.
Well, it was pretty similar to Luke's.
No, because Luke had the beige colors and he had the little scarf around and stuff. Han had like the fluffy, what do you call it? The fluffies around his hood, and it was the blue, like dark blue, navy blue jacket with the. It was so cool.
So Solo, a Star Wars story, came out May of 2018. Kind of an odd choice,
right?
And honestly, I think probably hurt their numbers. I think if this movie came out in December, I think it would have done a lot more number wise.
Right.
Because it was so soon after the last Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I was wondering why they released it at an odd time, because they don't have another one coming out in the fall, right?
Right. Yeah, we have to wait until December 19
quite
for episode 9. Like, why May?
That's very weird.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. I wonder if they were thinking, let's experiment and see.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know. Directed by Ron Howard.
Well,
he was a second director. He took over from, I can't remember the other guy's name, but another prominent director. Produced by Kathleen Kennedy. Written by the Kasdan brothers. Starring Alden Ehrenreich, Woody Harrelson, and Amelia Clark. What's your rating for this? We already talked about. So you saw it, I think opening night. I was too busy moving. I couldn't see it, and you had told me, you were like, well, it's sort of a 7 in some ways, an 8 in other ways. And I was pretty encouraged by that. But then I heard a bunch of other bad things about it, so then I had really low expectations. What number would you still say?
I think, in retrospect, I will probably settle on a 7.
Okay. I would give it an 8. I gave it an 8.
Yeah.
Because I just love Star Wars stuff, one, and have always loved. I love the cartoons. Yeah. I love... I mean, I say I like episode 1, 2, and 3. I've seen every movie in the theater. I mean, how many people can say that, really?
Yeah, right.
You know, I saw Star Wars.
That's crazy. You saw all of them so far in the theater.
Yeah, I saw Star Wars when I was 6 in Spokane, Washington, in the theater. I saw Empire opening weekend with my family.
By the way, supposedly I've seen them all in the theater too.
Yeah?
Because my dad says he took me to Star Wars.
But you were like 3?
I don't remember it. I remember Empire was the first one I remembered seeing in the theater.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I went as Luke for Halloween when I was 9. And my friend went as Boba Fett.
Nice.
And I did it by cobbling together. My brother had taken karate classes, and so he had one of those. He had one of those white gis, and then he had a white belt. So I used that, and then I think I had like some sort of I had a flashlight, I think, as a lightsaber, and then I think I just had like a wood branch that was sort of in the shape of a gun as my gun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny to think that in my takeaway from episode 1 and kind of episode 2 was that Luke still had a gun. Like you don't think of Luke Skywalker having a blaster.
Well, if you think Empire, you certainly do because he's but
he's definitely blastering it up in episode 1 or episode 4 and 5.
Yeah.
I mean, even when he goes to Cloud City,
right?
He's
wandering the halls with his blaster out.
Yeah. Which is weird to think. It's like you're a Jedi. Like pull out that that lightsaber. How much did this movie cost? Do you think? Solo.
Let's say 150 million.
250.
250.
Yeah, I think 150 would be really low.
Really low nowadays
for a big movie like this. But you're probably thinking, well, it didn't look that expensive.
Yeah, it didn't look that expensive.
Yeah, and because it didn't look that expensive.
There weren't that many different settings, for example. I mean, other than the CGI settings. But you know how like outdoors wise they were in they
were in a lot of settings. I mean,
really?
The train robbery was looked like the Alps or something.
I guess you're right. Maybe I'm not thinking about this correctly.
I mean, certainly there's a lot of CGI quote unquote settings, but is that what drives budgets?
They have to transfer all the whole production over to wherever it is, and
I wonder what sort of things are like in terms of rank, what really drives up the cost, because obviously better CGI costs a lot.
Yeah,
the number of scenes, you'll hear producers talk about this movie has 5,000 scenes or 5,000 shots, I should say, where essentially it's a shot might be like 5 seconds of film that's shot from a particular angle, and every shot that you do requires all this time and effort, and so I wonder what it is. Is it CGI? Is it location? Is it personnel?
Yeah.
Is it I don't know. It's interesting.
I just have to imagine that going to a remote location like the desert, like Tunisia and stuff like that, is expensive.
Well, especially if you are bringing
a whole production.
Yeah, like lots of different elements,
right? Because it wasn't like one scene with one actor that was like a side story.
Right.
Like all the main actors and actresses are there.
Right. And also if you have huge set pieces like a real Millennium Falcon, and
right,
all that kind of stuff. Box office. So it's early June. What do you think it's done so far in box office? So it's a Star Wars movie, right?
Worldwide, it's done 300 million.
Oh, good. 280 million.
That's disappointing
so far. It's weird. Very strange. It doesn't.
Should have been about 500 by now.
Well, so yeah, I mean, it's a Last Jedi, Force Awakens. These movies broke records in terms of first weekend and in terms of overall ticket sales, and Han Solo is a beloved character. I mean, Rogue One, it should, in terms of like its selling properties, didn't have what I would think a Han Solo movie would have. You know? So I think there's a lot of weird things. But I totally understand, because this was the first Star Wars movie of recent that I didn't see opening night.
Yeah.
I mean, the episode 8, I saw opening night and the next. I saw opening night, and then I saw the next night with you,
dude. I this is the first Star Wars movie ever that I considered not seeing in the theater.
Wow!
Before I saw it,
yeah, you know what I mean. It's like I think it was a combination of, I mean, because Rogue One had very similar press in terms of it having several reshoots.
But I didn't care because I didn't. So for me, and I think this isn't true of everyone, but it was a large segment of the Star Wars fan base there. We didn't ask for a Han Solo prequel, for one, and two, when we saw the preview, we were like, that's not Han Solo.
Well, I didn't watch the previews at all.
Yeah, so I think if you had watched the preview, it was clear, like, that's not Han Solo.
Yeah.
Because I will say in the movie, it's actually not as big of a problem as it was in the preview. In the preview, he has very few talking lines, and what you do see, you're like, it doesn't sound like him. It doesn't look like him. Where's the personality? They barely are even showing me Han Solo. What the fuck is going on here?
Interesting.
And then there's this whole other part that I'm obviously not a part of. A whole host of people that are boycotting Star Wars right now because they're so angry at the social justice warriorism of what they perceive to be Kathleen Kennedy.
Right. So I think but for me, even though I love Star Wars movies, even though with Rogue One saw it opening night, I too wasn't champing at the bit to see this.
Right.
And I just think it's a lot of things. I think Avengers Infinity War was, I think, just a few weeks before.
And Deadpool 2.
And Deadpool 2 came out at the same time.
I think 1 week before.
Okay.
Like that, yeah.
And those are, I mean, in terms of press and importance culturally, in some ways, strangely bigger movies than a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
The fact that I just saw a Star Wars movie, because Last Jedi comes out, I watch it a few times. I watch it a couple times in the theater, and then when it comes out on demand or something, I watch it.
It feels recent.
Yeah, and so there was that, and also I was moving. I was moving my home and my office, and so it was kind of hard for me to sort of plan all that in my mind. But I think there's just a lot of unnamed factors that led to this having multiple reasons why people just did not go to see this movie. Now, having said that, 280 million in the first 2 weeks?
Yeah.
I guess it's just been 2 weeks. Yeah. That's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
I mean, we're talking how many more millions are going to make in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's still making its money back.
How many more millions is it going to make over time?
But I will say that, and that's important to note, it has not yet made its money back. Because the figure you quoted did not include all the advertisement spend.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Right. So it brings up a lot of interesting questions about the future, which we'll get into later. Rotten Tomatoes, what do you think it got?
70.
71. Man,
Okay.
You are on fire. Audience Rotten Tomatoes, what do you think it got?
Oh.
So these are the...
Ooh, that's a good question.
So whenever people talk about audience Rotten Tomatoes, they act as if this is the general
real audience, right?
Yeah, but as I said during Last Jedi, when we talked about it, the Rotten Tomatoes audience score is the average rating of people who have an account on Rotten Tomatoes and who happen to have seen it early and who have happened to actually go onto Rotten Tomatoes and review the movie.
Okay.
Of which I don't know a single human being who does that. I don't know anyone in my life who has a Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
Who has a Rotten Tomatoes account?
Right.
And why? Why would you have an account on Rotten Tomatoes?
Because you're one of the 60% that liked Solo.
Oh, good. 65.
Oh, okay.
So I think when it first came out, it was like 50 or it was lower.
And it
yeah.
Which, by the way, I do believe, I hate to say this, but look, even people that were boycotting it because they were so upset at the previous movies, social justice warriorism or whatever, I think that when they finally watched it, I cannot believe that they hated it quite as much as they wanted to.
Yeah.
That said, I did see a video of a YouTube creator that I enjoy, and she really tore into the movie, and nothing to do with social justice warrior bullshit, but it was all legitimate complaints.
So let's rank all the Star Wars movies. What do you say?
Oh, okay. All of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's your number one?
Numero uno is still Empire.
And then?
I'm scared. Yeah, A New Hope.
Okay. And you just go through.
Okay, now we're going to go into interesting territory. Oh, dare I say Rogue One?
Right.
Okay. Then probably Return.
Okay.
Then The Force Awakens.
Okay.
then then Solo.
Oh, more than eight.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then now, in all fairness, it's been a very, very long time since I watched episodes 3 and 2, but I still feel I'll probably put 8 and then 3, 2, 1.
Okay. Interesting. Ours is pretty similar. So I used to, for the longest time, Empire was my favorite. But when I saw 4, 5, and 6, so when I saw episode 7 opening, it was actually the day before opening night at Cinerama downtown, they showed episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I didn't watch it 1, 2, and 3 because they started at like 2 in the morning of the previous day.
Right.
So I showed up in the morning and watched 4, 5, and 6 in the theater with all the nerds, like right up front. Yeah. And I have to say, like, episode 4 is
really great.
Is so solid, and 5 has some just epic moments.
Yes.
Hoth.
Yes.
Cloud City. Dagobah mostly is okay, but there's some actually odd moments in episode 5, like that, like when they go into the
Twi'lek.
They go into the space slug in the asteroid, and they're walking around in a stomach with like minimal.
But the dialogue makes up for it.
It's pretty bad, and you can tell again on the big screen with digital. You can tell they're walking
on a set.
They're walking on. It's clearly cellophane. It's clearly like a cellophane tarp.
I see.
That is over like probably it's like some cushions.
Yeah.
And they've kind of put some water on it, and there's a lot of dry ice, fog, and it just looks so bad. And there's really nothing like that in episode 4.
Yeah.
There's not a single moment in episode 4 where you're just like, what?
You make a very, very strong argument. The problem is there are so many great character interactions in episode 5 that I think that for me, 2 things. That and Luke's duel with Darth edge it over.
Totally. That's my thoughts too. But to me, in my old age, I appreciate a tight movie that doesn't try to be more than what it is.
No, and I honestly, I can't. I certainly. That is a very respectable position, very defensible.
Yeah.
And for me, it's certainly not a big gap between the two.
Yeah. So I go episode 4, 5, then I go 7.
7. Yeah. That's The Force Awakens.
Yeah, because I understand all the criticisms. Yeah. It's just a remake of 4, blah, blah, blah. But I cannot tell you the nerdgasm that Berto and I had when we saw this in the theater. Yeah. I was like, please God, make this be a good movie. And it was
so enjoyable.
It was such an experience. I felt so good, and there were so many moments, and there's some rough patches and there's some fan service for sure, but man, did J.J. Abrams serve up on a plate? Yeah. Just like this glorious experience for me. Yeah. So episode 7, and then I go Rogue, and then I go 8 because I like 8.
I liked 60, maybe 70% of 8.
I mean, there's again some rough patches, but I love Luke, and so Luke's a major character in this, and I don't have a problem with the writing at all. In fact, it totally makes sense to me given where the story needs to go, and the sort of play on wisdom and Jedi, non-kicking of ass kind of, and because it reminds me a lot of actual samurai movies, Akira Kurosawa, where you have characters who can kick ass, but the most heroic, most respectable characters in Akira Kurosawa movies are not the sort that kick ass. Yeah. They're the sort of guys who like think and might even sacrifice themselves,
No, I agree with that. My main problems with that movie were, 1, the whole Casino Planet sequence. 2, I mean, I'm still upset that they didn't tell Poe what the frickin' plan was.
Totally.
And I have...
And the Mary Poppins scene was pretty bad.
I agree, but it didn't bother me. Yeah. Like, I will not defend it to anyone, but it didn't bother me. The thing that bothered me more was that the training sequence, he didn't, like Yoda, we saw Yoda really training Luke. Even though, I mean, realistically, it wasn't that many scenes, but the progression was felt. Whereas the Luke training her felt totally sort of ad hoc and too short.
Which is a valid consideration and criticism. But again, we don't know the exact timeline because they purposely sort of leave that out. And two, it's similar to the Luke Yoda situation because at least in episode 5, he doesn't seemingly spend that much time training.
No, so let me clarify. I don't mean like neither the overall running time nor even the perception of the running time. I'm talking about more that when the first couple scenes they show us with Luke, he's not very good to what Yoda wants him to be able to do. And he, in fact, nearly gives up. And we see all that. And then we see
in episode 5.
In episode 5. And then we see him actually start to do a little better. And then he's doing the handstand. Now he's running through the forest with Yoda on his back. And then it culminates with a big cave scene, right? I didn't get that sense at all with him.
No, I think that was on purpose. I think because, what's his face could have easily written that in there of just like, the montage of...
Yeah, but they made her too automatically good at stuff.
Which I get.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like they pulled it off. I think it's one of those things that you just have to either accept that a character, some sort of character like that could develop so intuitively.
Right.
And that's not consistent with other storylines because Luke definitely was pretty bad at the Force prior to beating Yoda.
Yeah.
But he did have some abilities.
And it's odd that she is so strong with the Force considering she is Han Solo and Kira's daughter, right?
So episode 8 and then episode 5 episode 6. And because I love episodes. It's so weird because as I see more and more of the more recent Star Wars movies, I started to demote episode 6 because in my head I was like, well, of course you got to go 4, 5, 6, and then you got to go with the new movies. But as I start appreciating what they're really doing with these new movies, and then I rewatch episode 6, there's definitely awesome moments in 6, Return, but there's also just like whole swaths of time where you're just like, at least as an adult, I'm just completely bored, all the Ewok stuff, and when Luke and Han and Leia are about to be killed on a spit by Ewoks. Meanwhile, the galaxy is in peril. And all Luke has to do is just like force push everyone away and say like, fuck these people, let's move on with the story, But instead he like makes C-3PO rise up in the air, and and it's just like and it's such a missed opportunity because Lucas said it was originally going to be Wookiees, which would have just been so awesome. It just would have been so much better, and anyway. Then I go Han Solo below episode 6. These first 7 rankings I would consider to be very close.
Yeah.
Like I think Han isn't like way worse than episode 7. I would just say that. In fact, I might go like 4, 5 is in one category. Those are just like But then you got 7 Rogue, 8, 6 Han like is in another category, and then of course you have the prequels. Which
prequels
I go 3, 1, 2.
Oh, I see. 2 you feel is the worst.
Yeah, 2 just, had... I mean, it's hard to differentiate.
I will not debate this because it's been so long, and I only watched them back then, that I honestly don't know now.
Because I kind of liked 1, and there's some parts in 3 that especially at the end, I mean, aside from like Frankenstein, Darth Vader...
I enjoyed 3. Full disclosure.
By the way, so remember we were talking about last time about how so originally I used to think when Rogue One had all these reshoots, I was worried, and then when I actually saw what Rogue One became, I was like, well, maybe reshoots are a good thing.
Yeah.
And I was talking about when I wrote my book, if I didn't quote unquote reshoot my book 20 times, it would have been terrible. It just takes a while. I mean, imagine if all the movies you've ever hated or missed the mark, for example, episode 1.
Right.
Imagine if Lucas had the budget or the mindset of just like, well, let's finish this thing and then let's send it out into test audiences
and then redo it
and then just completely
fix it.
Yeah, it will just assume there are problems. And then imagine what they could have done with episode 1. Jar Jar would have been gone. They would have just gotten rid of Jar Jar, or they would have made him less racist, for example.
Yeah, they would probably get rid of him, but yes.
And there would have been several other
They would have
changes.
recast well, if not recast, they would have certainly had a different angle to how they treated the little kid.
Okay, and they would probably not talk about like a trade federation. Like everyone was like, "What's this?" They imagine what they could have done with that.
Yes.
And so what's my point here?
That if they had that by episode 3, is that where you were going to? Or actually, I don't know where you were.
Yeah,
because I thought you were making a point like that episode 3 benefited from the fact that if they had done reshoots on episode 1, it would have been better. But
I don't know where I was going. But anyway, yeah, episode 3 has some really great. Oh no, yeah, right, exactly. That's where I was going. It's like, imagine if episode 3 could have done reshoots. They wouldn't have done the Frankenstein scene.
Exactly.
People were laughing in the theater.
No, I will say like. In all fairness, as much as I dog on the prequels and stuff, my actual feeling when I walked out of the theater of episode 3 was, okay. In fact, I remember saying, if this wasn't Star Wars, I would have really, really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah.
And that the only reason I even was still upset was because I had all this legacy of upset now.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it since it came out.
Yeah, well, I have. Really? You haven't seen...
I haven't seen any of them since they came out.
Really?
Yeah, I saw episode 1 in the theater 2 or 3 times.
And you haven't seen it since?
I might have seen it once on DVD ages ago.
And
then episodes 2 and 3, I never watched after the theater.
So you must be familiar from clips or something?
Well, I watched that whole Red Letter Media.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that one does a pretty good job of dissecting it.
All right, so let's get into more of this after the break. What do you say, Berto?
Yep.
All right, we're back from the break. If you haven't become a patron of the podcast yet, do so now. Go to patreon.com. When you become a patron, make sure you pay attention to the thank you page because that gives you information on how to access the premium episodes. Every day, I field 5 to 10 emails from patrons emailing me saying, so I became a patron, but I don't know how to access the premium page. Probably exaggerating 5 to 10, but I feel like I was doing a lot of it today. But anyway, make sure you pay attention and the other thing is, if you run into problems trying to access the premium feed, go back to the instructions and read them carefully.
Okay.
Because when people email me, there's nothing wrong with emailing me, and you email me at contact@psychologyinseattle.com. I'm here to help, but 99.9% of the time, I fix the problem by saying, go back to the instructions and read them carefully.
Right.
Or I just copy and paste a section of it. It's long and it's confusing. It's not our fault that it's a confusing process. This is, believe it or not, the easiest process available to us given technology today. I'm pretty convinced that in 50 years, this will be easier. We will need someone to pay attention to podcasts and notice the vast amount of money that can be made in this field. Podcasts are still basically being treated like they don't really matter. I mean, YouTube definitely is paid attention to by advertisers.
Right.
Podcasts are just like, isn't that just sort of like bad radio and stuff? And people don't understand, like, podcasts are a major source of media consumption among a relatively small slice of people, but
hyper engaged.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The main thing they need to do when they sign up as patrons, the first thing is change the account and change the password.
Yeah, do not do that.
Oh, okay.
Because if they do that,
it screws everyone up.
I panic and call Berto, and he has to fix it.
And I have to go reset it.
Yeah, okay. So let me read some of the hater reviews.
Haterades?
These are haterades from Rotten Tomatoes, from the audience people.
Okay. Because I have some complaints too, by the way.
So there are 4 here. Irrelevant story, poorly written script, terrible acting.
Okay, disagree so far with everything.
Bad cinematography.
Oh, what?
And pointless shoehorned references to past Star Wars films.
Okay, I fully disagree with this.
Yeah. Another one. Another failure because Disney couldn't keep their politics out of Star Wars.
Oh, my God.
The movie was awful. Okay, number 3. Boring and derivative with cringe-inducing social justice warrior moments. Just terrible. And then the 4th one. Another fuck up orchestrated by Kathleen Kennedy. Okay, this is all caps. She destroys everything she touches. So let's just review Kathleen Kennedy's movies that she's produced over the years. Can you name some?
Minority Report.
I don't think so.
She didn't produce it?
No, it's a good guess, but I don't think she produced it. She's produced other Spielberg movies.
I thought she produced tons of Spielberg. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know because in my mind it was like Schindler's List.
Yes.
Okay. The E.T.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll just name them.
All right.
So this is just like a half the list.
Yeah.
Raiders, Poltergeist, E.T.
Fucked up, all of them.
E.T., Gremlins, The Color Purple,
Social Justice.
Back to the Future, Goonies, Roger Rabbit,
Disgusting.
Always, Cape Fear, Schindler's List,
Everything she touches.
Jurassic Park, Alive. Do you remember Alive?
Yes.
That's a great movie. The Bridges of Madison County, Twister, Snow Falling on Cedars, The Sixth Sense, Signs, Seabiscuit.
She wasn't really a producer on these, was she?
Producer.
All of these.
Yeah. Munich, War of the Worlds, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Warhorse, Lincoln.
What a failure.
Force Awakens, BFG. Have you seen BFG?
No, I haven't.
It's a good movie. I mean, it's unique is the thing.
I just didn't want to see it because of the social justice warriors.
Yeah. Plus, as soon as I saw that, because they just they do the trailer and it's this giant and they say BFG and the only thing I think it was big
fucking gun.
big fucking giant.
Oh, I see.
Oh, is there a big fucking gun?
Big fucking gun was the BFG. Was the gun in
video game
in Doom, right?
Oh, okay.
BFG.
I never played Doom. The Girl on the Train, Rogue One, Last Jedi, Solo, and Episode 9.
So pretty much a complete career fuck up.
Yeah, she destroys everything she touches.
But just to be clear, she's had her chance at movies. I think it's time to look for a new profession.
So why the hate, Berto?
Okay, there is this dark segment of the population that is now hypersensitive. Like they have this exposed nerve, and anything that comes close to sounding like they're making a social point, they're like, social justice warriors. Oh, it's terrible. It's horrible.
So, by the way, we're gonna spoil, if we haven't already, everything in Solo.
Right.
What's an example in Solo?
The robot, Lando's robot,
who inspires a revolt.
Inspires a revolt. Now, by the way, I have plenty of complaints about that robot, but here's the key difference. When one complains about something because it is not entertaining, the script or the dialogue is boring, or it's inconsistent, or whatever, right? Or it takes you out of the suspension of disbelief. Those are just, criticisms about like the end result. But a lot of these other criticisms have nothing to do really with what they're watching, and it's everything, all this fictional maelstrom that they form around, like they imagine there's these huge agendas and they're just trying to like control us all, and so they want every movie to like teach us all this social justice bullshit and blah blah blah, and so it becomes this larger than life battle for them. And so in a movie that you're watching where like 1% of the movie has a robot saying 2 lines about equal rights, right? They're like, that's it. Solo is destroyed. The world is over.
Yeah, I agree. Why else do you think? Because right after it came out, the big story was it's a flop. It's a terrible movie. Why do you think there were so many people who, aside from that?
Okay, now I do think there were some. I don't know the flop thing, but there were some legitimate criticisms around the thing. Like, in fact, I didn't like any of this. a lot of the things that they revealed about Han Solo's backstory were sort of not meaningful reveals. For example, again, spoiler. How did he get his blaster? Oh, his blaster. Oh, he got it from this dude. Oh, okay. And how did Chewbacca get his iconic gun belt thing? Oh, he got it from this dude.
Well, yeah, I mean, because to me, if you had to have every single element of these characters, these huge backstories, it would have bogged the movie down.
No, but I'm going the other direction. Why do you have to explain such trivial matters in such trivial ways?
Oh, I see.
Like, did you ever wonder as a kid or an adult, where did Han Solo get that blaster?
No.
Did we ever think, oh, I can't wait to hear the backstory of Chewie's bandolier?
Yeah, and I always got the impression that with Han's blaster, like if when I was a kid, if you asked me where he got it, I would have said, well,
the thrift store.
Well, he's probably had like 20 blasters.
Yes.
And that's just the one he happens to have right now.
In fact, it's proven when he's talking to Luke about blasters. He mentions it as this commodity product. I can't believe you're using these backward weapons. I always rely on just like a trusty blaster. But he doesn't say my trusty blaster.
Right. He just says a blaster.
A trusty. Yeah. It's like, and he shows it to him. It's just a throwaway thing he's got.
Right.
Also, along with that, when he meets Chewbacca and he's like, "What's your name?" "Oh, Chewbacca." "Oh, I don't think I'm going to be able to remember that. I'm going to have to come up with something short." Like, that's another thing. It's like, we know how nicknames come about. Like, you don't have to explain to me that that's how his nickname came about, right? Yeah. Meaning, there were a lot of little things that were unnecessary, that didn't add or subtract. And so I do think, but that's not enough to say, oh, this movie's a flop. I hate this whole thing.
And I thought that there was the only fan service or, origin story fan service scene that I only slightly didn't like was the Solo. Yeah. It was
that
like,
one really pissed me off, actually.
Well, that the premise I liked, but it was drawn out way too long. Like, the guy's like, so, what's your last name? What's your surname? And he's like, I don't have one. And he's
who are
like,
your people?
Well, who are your people? And he's like, I don't have people. And I was like, oh, Solo. And what I was hoping the guy would be like, okay, Han Solo, boom.
Yeah.
And so Han would be like, huh, that's weird. But instead, the guy, the Imperial administrator is like,
R2D2. We shall remember this name.
Well, so you don't have, the chance that this is the first guy that has come along.
Exactly.
Like what would have been funny, actually, now that I think about it, what would have been better is if there's like two other guys in front of Han, and one person comes up and says, my name's, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, what's your surname? And they're like, I don't have one. And it's like, oh, who are your people? I don't have people. Okay, blah, 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 Solo.
Yeah.
Han, what's your name? I don't have one. Okay, Han Solo. Like, it's just
Fine.
a label.
It's a thing that they do.
Because the beauty, I thought, of the Solo name kind of fits with a lot of things that they're trying to say, which is these are not important people.
Sure.
Solo doesn't come from a long line of solos that are just these awesome people. Like he's basically, he doesn't have a last name. He's like, what's her face in episode 7 and 8? Why can't I remember her name?
But see,
what's her name?
In Rey?
Yeah. God.
But see, my first of all, and that's going to be shown to not be real. Because we have the only word we have on that is from freaking Kylo Ren. So that's not going to be the end.
I felt like the writer and the producers were putting their stake down with that scene. Right. I mean,
I agree that Ryan is. I agree that Ryan was. Okay. I just don't know that the next.
Well, who knows? I mean, the next person who writes it isn't Ryan, so
that's what I'm saying. Like,
right.
I think
yeah.
Now, what I think really upset me about the Solo thing. And it wasn't even when I saw it, because it's almost like when I saw it, it's almost like a car hit me. And then I had to wake up in the hospital later and realize, oh, shit, that was really lame, right? Because what happens is Han Solo was already an adult at this point.
Yeah.
Right? He's gone his whole life just going by Han, presumably, right? Never needing a last name. So just because this government official stamps him Solo, now he's not only fine using that as his full name and tells everyone that's his name, but later in life when he has a child, that's the name we go with, Ben Solo.
Well, I'm guessing it has to do with the culture of names in this world. That maybe
I agree with you that if they had set up a precedent that like every unknown person gets the Solo stamp, I would sort of liked it a little more. But anyways, but the other part that upset me, which is a trivial matter, but it did upset me, is that they were playing the Empire theme while they were showing the propaganda video for the Empire.
Oh, really?
And it totally...
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so they're in the airport, in the starport, and there's a hollow video playing that's a propaganda recruitment, and they're playing the Empire music in the video.
That's kind of dumb.
That is so dumb.
It should have been some other music because
now what they're saying, if we were going to take it to heart, is all along, that's actually been some theme composed for the Empire.
Right.
Oh, no. Yeah. And not only that, but like the Cantina music, every music we've actually ever heard in the universe sounds nothing like the John Williams score. Right? Like, even though that is John Williams, it's...
Yeah. Well, so I have various different theories as to why there's been a lot of hate about this and other movies. One is that, and I've given a lot of thought because I listen to a lot of critics on podcasts talk about various movies, including these movies. And I think that and I talk to a lot of people of various ages about how they feel about the new movies. And I think that, and I feel like there are a lot of people that sort of claim ownership of the Star Wars universe who,
like me,
who I believe are less of a quote unquote real fan than I am.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like I was there from the start.
Right.
And I loved Star Wars stuff, and I know you did too. So I think one of the things that needs to be pointed out is between episode 6 and really like episode 7, because you could have episode 1, 2, and 3, but those were kind of like blips. They weren't because we didn't have the internet then. It wasn't, or at least it would have been early internet for episode 3.
Yeah, it was early internet.
There wasn't the cultural phenomenon. I mean, there's certainly a cultural phenomenon about episode 1, 2, and 3, but especially episode 1, the build up. But my point is that there, for example, today I see regular people walking around with Star Wars shirts on.
That's right.
I haven't seen that my entire life. Until the past few years, most people didn't care about Star Wars. They would watch the movies and blah blah blah, but it wasn't something that meant a lot to them the way that it seems to mean a lot to them now.
Interesting.
Yeah, I remember there was a time when Star Wars and Star Trek were, really actual nerdy things that a subset of nerds actually paid attention to.
That's interesting and maybe that's just because I was a nerd, but Star Wars definitely defined a lot of my identity and reality for a period of 8 years.
But there was a lull, like you could.
No, I'm saying when I was a kid,
yeah, okay. Yeah. So, but then because there's no internet to sort of uphold or marketing or even merchandise on the level of like a T-shirt, like getting a Star Wars T-shirt today is so easy. You walk into the Gap and they have like 5 Star Wars T-shirts.
Right.
Star Wars T-shirts you've never seen.
Yeah.
like they'll have like a picture of Phasma, and like there'll be some joke about Game of Thrones on there. Or something.
I mean, but you're talking about like adults, right?
Yeah.
Because but when we were kids, like I had Star Wars underwear and Star Wars sheets and Star Wars
and. Our parents were not into
Star
Wars. And even my older siblings weren't into Star Wars. They were just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, those are good movies, whatever.
Whatever, yeah. And I mean, they liked it, but my point is that I feel like and I only 20% feel like this, but I feel like my opinion is more important or something.
Right, you earned it.
because there's all these people that claim that they'll watch Han Solo the movie and they'll be like, this doesn't fit into the true nature of Star Wars. And I'm like, you're 22. How could you possibly know what the true nature of Star Wars is? You were 5 when Episode 3 came out. How could you possibly know? This claiming of ownership and it's usually young people. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is inconsistent, and I'm like, you don't fucking know.
But you get this with Lord of the Rings. And Lord of the Rings came out before any of us were a thing,
Sure, and I feel similarly about that because in the 70s, Lord of the Rings became pretty popular, and I was a part of that, wave. And anyway, so
someone in the 70s might have been like, "You like what?"
Now
you're not a true fan.
Now, which is fine. Here's what I'll say is that if you didn't like the movie, that is totally fine. If it's one thing I've learned about talking with people about movies, listening to podcasts, is that everyone approaches a piece of art differently.
Yeah.
And there's no wrong or right about how you felt when you watched something. If you decide to walk into an art gallery and be skeptical of everything you see and just poo-poo everything, that's fine. That's your life. And if someone else walks in and just decides, you know what, I just want to appreciate everything, and it's all made by first graders, and you're just going to be like, art is great by first graders. It's just art, and it's just experience. Now, what I have a problem with is when people attack each other for their opinions about the art. You can attack people for not being sensitive to certain, like if you're, for example, with Jar Jar, if you're going to be like, look, Rastafarian man, you have to like Jar Jar. You know what I mean? Like, or no, this is actually more in line with it. If you're a white privileged person and you're like, Jar Jar is not insensitive to Caribbean people, that's a wrong opinion. You know what I mean? There are certain lines, but anyway, my point is that you can like it, you can dislike it, it's fine. But when you base it on things that I think are at least worth commenting on, which this is why I'm commenting on it. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm just saying here's my reasons for why some people I think are coming at it from a kind of an odd place where they don't like it. Again, it's fine. I think some people completely overhype episode 4, 5, and 6. Mm-hmm. If you rewatch episode 4, 5, and 6 as many times as I have, and many times as Berto had, as we've already been talking about, there's some massive clunky moments, especially 6. Yeah. And so if you're gonna say that Han Solo, Solo, a Star Wars story, has problems and Kathleen Kennedy has ruined the Star Wars universe, just go back and watch what they're ruining.
Yeah.
Because there are, and then that's not even counting episode 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
Well,
but you know what? Sorry to interrupt. One thing I realized recently is that a lot of the people complaining actually were kids, and I know they were kids and actually enjoyed 1, 2, and 3 in a way, kind of like how we enjoyed the originals.
Right, exactly. So, to claim that Solo is, somehow this, say you're like, oh, I didn't like that scene. There, there were some good scenes, there were some bad scenes. To claim that is such a departure from every other Star Wars movie is just false. Right. Every Star Wars movie had good moments and bad moments. Sure. And so, anyway.
Yeah. Well, and to go along with that, and I want to make something clear. I enjoyed this movie.
Yeah. You gave it a 7.
I was going to 8. In fact, the only reason I downgraded it is because I felt, and now I'm just being like a little bit harder of a judge. I felt, look, you actually have a good movie here. I enjoyed the action. Freaking Lando blew it out of the park. Like, that was great, And I thought Han Solo, even though he doesn't sound or really act very close to the Han Solo we grew up with, that actor did a good job. And I felt that what's her name did a good job, and so I really enjoyed it. So I wish, to go back to the reshoots, I wish they would have reshot it, or not even reshot it, just re-edited it one last time to fix some of these things.
Yeah, I think it was kind of an editing issue. So I think another reason why people didn't like it was because they are young and their style of movie that they want to see is where the heroes kick ass. I think that's actually a major element in the backlash to these more recent movies, especially episode 8, because to you and I, you and I have been watching movies a long time. When we were younger, imagine the movies you saw when you were like 15, and you'd just be like, yeah, that the hero kicked, like just Luke Skywalker, for example. You watch episode 4, Luke Skywalker is like the quintessential underdog who kicks ass. He blows up the Death Star. So there's a lot of satisfaction in this sort of black and white good guy versus bad guy. The movies have gotten progressively more nuanced. Episode 8, Poe is supposed to be the hero as he was in episode 7, but he actually becomes this. He's acting heroic, but he ends up actually ruining things for some people. Luke Skywalker is a conflicted character. He has emotions and flaws, and in Han Solo, you have a character who is kind of at the whim of other people, right? He's not really in control, and he doesn't really win the day in the end of the movie. He has to give things up. By the end of the movie, he's almost right back where he started, but before the rebellion gives him one of the fuel canisters, he's basically penniless and like doesn't have a ship to get off the planet and everything. And I feel like there are younger people who want, the hero to kick ass. And when the hero doesn't kick ass, they don't like the movie. What do you think, bro?
I don't know. That's an interesting theory. But I'm sitting here trying to remember Star Wars Episode 4. And, I mean, Luke starts off, I know some of my friends would call him as an extremely whiny little punk. I don't think he was. I think he was like an average teenager. But still, nothing that remarkable. Then he gets his ass kicked by a sand person. And then they meet Han Solo. And so far, he nearly gets beat up and has to be saved by Obi-Wan. Then he's kind of complaining about Han. He's not sure about him. Still has done nothing. And then finally, they try to rescue the princess, and it sort of doesn't go according to plan, and they nearly get crushed and all these things. At the end of the movie, he finally finds his calling and shoots down the big...
Right, okay, granted, but lots of movies, I think, geared towards younger people have a hero.
Sure.
Like in Everdeen, Katniss Everdeen, she kicks ass. She's good at what she does, and she wins the day,
Right. But now Rey is pretty badass too.
Yeah, but the character, the storyline is so much more twisty, where it's like who's good, who's bad. Now, certainly these movies aren't like French super nuanced movies, but my point is that in Solo, a Star Wars story, you don't really know how the plot would have evolved so that Han Solo would be standing with a medal around his neck at the end of the movie. You know what I mean? And I think there are some people who want that. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I could see that. And also, we cannot underestimate how much recently, as soon as there's any mention of something remotely related to equality or equal rights or women's rights or any of that, they immediately hate.
Yeah. So another reason I think is that there are some people who just don't like this sort of movie. When I listen to critics and podcasts, I'm starting to get to know the different personalities of these critics, and there are certain people, particularly critics, who often are forced to go to a movie early. You know what I mean? Just because they're a critic, who just don't like these kinds of movies. They're not into sci-fi, or they're not into action, or they're not into the Star Wars world. And I could totally imagine, like, if I had no background on Star Wars, and I had to watch this movie, I'd be like, what's the big deal? Like, It's just, So I totally get if you're not into the world, or you don't like these kinds of movies. Berto and I, we'll probably watch Solo and all the other Star Wars movies and all the other Avengers movies. By the time we die, we will probably watch each of them like 20 times more, you know what I mean? Or more than that. And we'll watch clips and we'll watch, background story, and we'll watch, we'll look at fan art. Some people, it's like that, 2 times a year they're like, okay, fine, I'll watch an Avengers movie, you know? So if it's not your thing, you're probably not going to like it. The last group that I think don't like this movie are what I'm gonna coin a phrase.
Okay.
I'm gonna call these people the nerd bandwagoners.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean by that?
Sure. Like maybe they might have not held that opinion to begin with, but they see some influencing nerds and they're like, okay, I'm going to jump on that one.
Exactly. YouTube is a massive influencer for a certain group of people, younger people. And there are certain influencers on YouTube who are trying to make money, right? Yeah. They need to make videos that get a lot of hits. And if they make a video where they're like, yeah, I like Star Wars, whatever, moving on in life, then they're not going to get a lot of hits, and they're not going to cause a controversy, and they're not going to make any money. Whereas if they just rail and sarcastically make fun of something, there's a certain adolescent group out there who love that kind of thing because they feel powerless, and they want someone on their team to strike back at anybody.
Yeah.
And so these younger, highly influenced, group of people just bandwagon on this YouTuber's opinion and adopt all the premises, even though if they just didn't watch YouTube and just sat down and watched Solo from a perspective of just like, I'm just going to watch,
go see a movie.
I'm just going to see a movie, and I hope and I wonder if it will entertain me. They would have liked it.
It is so ridiculous. Okay, look, I saw many videos about Solo on YouTube, but there's 3 in particular that I want to call out, because one of them was a person that leading up to the movie was speaking up a lot against it because of the previews, but not in the whole, this is not one of the like
social justice.
It's not, I mean, he might mention that, but that's not his main point or anything. He was really more concerned about like, they should have cast someone else. In fact, he offered like his opinions of all these other alternatives and stuff. But once he saw the movie, he put out a video. And I really appreciated this video because he talked about a lot of things he didn't like, but he said that in the end it worked, and here's why, all the reasons that it worked. So it was a good video. Another video that I liked was this gal that I like her videos. She makes fun of a lot of movies she doesn't like, but she didn't like Solo. But she laid out really compelling reasons why she didn't like Solo. And in either case, it wasn't some sort of angry rant at the world and Kathleen Kennedy stuff. But this other video, the third one, the guy hadn't even seen the movie yet and put out this scathing video about Kathleen Kennedy and the death of all these things and everything.
So let's guess how many hits the third one got.
More hits.
We're probably millions. Yeah. And so people out there know that the third guy, and really all of them, but the third guy probably knows that when he produces a certain product, whether he believes it or not, or whether it has any evidence in reality or not, he knows if he gets 3 million, views, he's going to make, 10 grand or 50 grand, or I don't know how many. I one time, because we make, the podcast makes a little bit of money on YouTube ourselves. It's not our main platform, but we do make some money. And I figured out I think it's like a penny every 100 views or 1,000 views or something.
So some of those creators are now having to resort to different avenues because YouTube demonetizes them if they're considered to do hate speech. Or
I'm
saying
but a flaming review of Star Wars is not something that's going to get.
Well, you'd be surprised. Like some of the channels that I like that are not at all crazy and weird and wacky, like Philip DeFranco, get demonetized frequently.
Well, we get demonetized. I don't know if you know this, but we have videos that get demonetized. It doesn't matter to me because we don't make that much money on YouTube, but some of them, it's like ridiculous, and I'm positive no one's listening. Actually, there's not a human.
No, there's algorithms.
It's some dumb weird flag, and I'm like, but there's nothing in the title. Right. It's
so I think when the guy is railing, calling her names, saying really threatening, like just horrible, I don't think he gets demonetized that bit. But still,
but his channel gets subscribed, and then his other
and
videos.
He has sponsors.
Yeah, right. So anyway, and I think that this is most of the time it's probably fine. You know, it's like you have bandwagons of various different sorts, and it's you know, and when it comes to Star Wars, it's like, who cares if you know, you can have a bandwagon and weird opinions about Star Wars, doesn't matter. But when it actually becomes more troublesome is with political propaganda, which is a exact same thing that's happening on the internet today, when you have people who literally believe that Hillary Clinton is a
cannibalistic, baby killing,
reptile demon. There are literally people who say that enough, and there are a bunch of influenceable people who are bandwagoning with that, and it's a very similar, you know, Pizzagate, for example.
Well, and by the way, even with movies, I don't know if you heard recently, the Asian actress from episode 8, she quit Twitter. Because the amount of hate and just horribleness that she's experienced.
Yeah.
Ray, the actress Ray, she early on she quit Twitter too because of the same sort of.
Yeah. We recently went on Twitter. I've been experimenting with posting stuff on Twitter.
I'm supposed to create what was my handle that I?
Psychoberto.
Psychoberto.
Yeah. Anyway, Twitter. Okay. Favorite scenes, Berto? What do you say?
Oh my gosh. Okay. The one that made me tear up was when Chewie sat in the co-pilot seat. In that moment, I was sitting there, I'm like, God damn it. Oh, you got me.
Yeah. Yeah, there were a lot of Chewie Han moments that I thought were done very tastefully and very quick.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like when Chewie sat down, it was like, you know, it was like, someone got up,
sits down.
And then Han, you know, like, Han kind of looks, is like, there's a, you know, sit down, you know. And
so that subtle stuff was the best parts of the movie. The first time they walk up to Lando, it was brilliant. It was so cool.
Yeah,
he looked amazing. It was just perfect.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoyed the interaction with the bad guy. Beckett?
Or no, the ultimate gangster bad guy.
The gangster bad guy.
Yeah.
He was a good actor. He plays. Doesn't he play the
plays Vision?
Sentry. Oh yeah, Vision. That's the same actor, right?
Yeah.
I enjoyed the scene, like sort of when we first meet him, and it was refreshing to have a non-CGI character. With
so I don't know if you know this, but the original before the reshoot, before the Ron Howard got added, it was a CGI bad guy.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, good choice. Good choice to change it.
Yeah.
So that was fun. I was definitely let down when they revealed who was the masked bad guy, the Raiders.
Yeah.
But I liked the look of that character. So the first time they show up, they're like
they look like Reavers from Firefly.
Oh yeah. So I liked that scene when they're first showing up and flying up,
or like the bad guys in Road Warrior.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I sort of like that. Other favorite scenes?
Yeah, I didn't. While we're on the topic, that whole twist at the end, personally, I think should have been taken out.
You mean the Jar Jar? I mean,
where the Raiders reveal themselves to be rebels.
Oh, that I thought you meant the Darth Maul thing.
That was something that elongated the movie, confused it quite a bit.
Yeah, you're like, wait, is she his daughter? Is she Beckett's daughter?
Right.
No, that's not. No.
Yeah.
Wait, who was her mother?
Right.
Wait, what's going on?
Yeah, it really threw me. And after the movie, I was like, it was a little long. And I thought, well, what can you get rid of? And I thought, well, you could have got just leave them Raiders. If you wanted to make the next movie reveal that they're rebels or something, fine. But it was like, why do we need that part?
Oh, speaking, if we're talking about things I didn't love, so obviously I have no problem with the social justice warriorism or whatever.
By the way, it's not social justice. There's nothing in this movie that is a social justice warrior, one. Two, there's nothing wrong with being a warrior for social justice.
No. And actually, first of all, I totally agree with the second point. But to
At the center of this movie is a white male.
Yes. But to debate your first point, they did hand on a platter the Lando's robot character.
That's fine.
And now, I actually hated that character, by the way.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with like that angle.
Some people love.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of women love.
Yeah. And that's fine. Like I'm not gonna die on this hill. It's just I didn't like the design of the character because historically in Star Wars, robots don't look that human.
Yeah.
You know, number one. Number two, like none of even C-3PO, the most human looking one, because he's for cyborg relations.
That criticism doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
No, but I mean, like, just tell me another robot in the whole universe that looks at all human.
Well, as human as that one, K2SO.
And remember, this is a prequel.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like.
No, she's got hips.
She moves. Okay, so the hips thing really bothered me.
Yeah, no.
Like, because she's talking kind of sassy, you know?
No.
And then as she's walking away, it's like she has these really like it was.
And again, remember,
it felt on the level of racist on some level.
And listen, this is a prequel, right? If you have cyborgs in your universe that have basically full human context awareness,
not cyborgs,
robots in your universe that have full human context awareness, why use something like a C-3PO for your interactions, protocol interactions, if he doesn't get so much context? Like C-3PO misses a ton of context because he's not that smart in the end, right? The smartest robots.
Oh, I see. What I'm saying? You're saying that
she's a full human.
L3 acts like a human.
Yeah, she has. She acts as human as anyone else.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, okay, the way she taught, but K2SO kind of had a thing like that too.
Which one's K2SO?
From Rogue One.
I don't remember.
Well, K2SO.
Oh,
he cracked a lot of jokes. He
all right, fine. You're right,
he
but it didn't bother me as much.
Yeah.
Yes, but it didn't bother me as much.
But yeah, there was something about this character that you could definitely sense an actress speaking through it. You know what I mean? Like R2-D2, you don't get a sense of like there's an actor behind the scenes like creating a character. This sounded more like someone it was more like a robot had downloaded a human consciousness into that thing. Yeah, I didn't really notice that. I just didn't like the way the butt looked when she was walking away.
I was unnecessary.
I was like, that looks sexual on some level, you know, which later comes into play. My favorite scenes that I thought of off the top of my head, I forgot about the Han and Chewie sitting down in it, but that's great. But I actually liked the beginning scenes on Corellia where Han and Kira are trying to escape.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I liked that because it was, you start right in with the action. Yep. There's no, there's no Senate, there's no negotiations. It's just boom, you're just like right away. Now, of course, throughout the movie, they're referred to as Kira. Do you know how Kira is spelled?
No.
How would you think it's spelled?
Kira would be Kira, Kira.
Right. I thought it's Kira. There's a Kira in Star Trek, and I think that's how they spell it in Star Trek. Anyway, it's spelled Q.
Oh.
I.
Okay.
Apostrophe.
Oh.
R.
Okay.
A.
Okay.
It's key like. It's like when Prince writes a.
It's so dumb.
It's like, really, like just like Han is just HAN.
HAN.
It's
Luke.
It's not. Yeah, Luke is just Leia.
Like the hardest one was Darth.
Yeah, Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan.
Yes.
Kira, like it's like some writer was like,
imagine if C-3PO was K apostrophe.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
I mean, it's such a hacky way of trying to make a character seem foreign or exotic or something.
And also unnecessary considering it doesn't come across in the audio at all.
And you're never going to see it written down in the movie. So
it only makes it less memorable, because then when you see the character written out, you don't even recognize
it. No one will recognize it. And, no one's gonna presumably you're trying to build a fan base and like people dressing up in costumes. Now, if people want to like write on Facebook that they're going as Kira,
I love Kira. Who?
They're gonna have to spell it QI''RA. Anyway,
it's so dumb.
But anyway, I love the Corellia scenes. I thought that the bad guy, the big centipede thing, was a little over the top. I was like, well, I don't believe this is a real character. It's they should have. I feel like when they have a character, they should default to a human being unless they absolutely have to go CGI.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a really good idea, because it's I mean, also, let's be honest. The reason Jabba worked in Return is because he didn't move.
Well, yeah, and he's a puppet.
Yeah.
And he didn't do anything. He just sort of talked a lot.
But you sort of believed that this blob would, which is why in the reshoot of episode 4, it was so ridiculous to see Jabba limbering around.
Yeah, so dumb. But anyway, I liked Corellia. I loved the scene where Han meets Chewie. Han gets thrown in.
Oh yeah, right.
Did you like that?
Yeah, totally.
Well, I thought that was brilliant.
Because for a second I was like, why would they show us a Rancor monster?
Right.
And I was like, oh, cool.
And I thought that whole sequence was beautiful. I mean, Chewie is just kicking his ass.
Yep.
And you see all these other bones around, and you're like, oh, because the whole thing about that you kind of know from somewhat non-canon sources and from other things. Chewie hasn't been given a scene in the other movies where you really understand, like, he is
a beast.
He's a beast.
Yeah.
He has fangs. Yeah. He's giant. He can, Han refers to, like, he can rip people's arms off.
The closest was in Empire when he's choking Lando.
Right. And but you never get that sense of like he could just his people can just rip people apart. He's a hairy beast on some level.
Yeah.
He's smart and civilized, but he's like raw, and to see that opening of just like he is dangerous.
Yep.
He's a dangerous dude, and he's been tortured down there.
Yep.
And the way he gets his food is by eating prisoners, because he doesn't have a choice. So here comes this next guy, and he's going to eat him. And then Han, again, because Han is Han. There are a lot of scenes where they definitely were super consistent with Han's character.
And that is ultimately why I say that even though he didn't quite sound like him or look like him, the spirit ultimately was there.
Yeah, Ron Howard, the Kazan brothers, there were so many ways they could have fucked up the writing.
Yeah.
And there were several scenes where Han, the way he got out of things was by being cocky or by trying to weasel his way out, by being persistent, by not really caring so much about his ego, just sort of like, he's working angles, he's charming and always moving
on my way to see Jabba.
Yeah, like he's just there's so many elements where I've felt, man, like this makes sense to me.
Yeah.
When you see Han on Tatooine, I can absolutely see this is where he came from. So the Han meets Chewie scene I just thought was just brilliant, and a risk because they could have been prisoners together. But instead it's like the first time they meet, Chewie's trying to eat him.
That was good.
When Han loses to Lando playing cards, I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, that was good because we were expecting him to win.
Right, but he loses, and then you just get everyone around Han is just like disappointed in Han, and he's just like and again you get this sense like Han loses some and he wins some. He's a gambler. He takes risks, and he was sure he was going to win because that's his character. But sometimes, when he presses the hyperdrive, he's sure it's going to work, and sometimes it doesn't work. And I loved the scene where L3 becomes the navigation system. Did you know that whole? Did you catch that whole thing?
I did, but I didn't like it.
Oh, I loved it because, you know, episode 5, when R2 and C-3PO hook themselves up to the navigation computer, they're just like, oh, this is kind of a weird, and it also explains why in the universe of Star Wars, which of course makes no sense in science fiction sense, but that the Millennium Falcon is special not because it's fast, but because it has this really unique, intelligent, almost human-like navigation system that knows how to do things that, regular navigation systems wouldn't be able to do.
I would have been totally okay with it if I had liked L3.
Yeah.
So I think I only have a problem with it because I didn't like L3.
So you didn't like L3 because she was too human and she was kind of obnoxious.
Yeah, she didn't fit the mold of robots that I've come to like. And you're right that Rogue One sort of was in that direction, but for some reason that one wasn't as annoying. And to some extent,
C-3PO is very human, but a kind of human.
No, but that's the key distinction. Why does he look human? Because he's a protocol droid. Or like, why does he look humanoid? Because he's a protocol droid. Okay, but even that, he doesn't walk at all like a human. He's like all, you know, jointy.
But his motivation isn't power or influence. He's just trying to survive, and he's scared a lot.
That's right. And he doesn't understand context well at all.
Right. So his personality, if you will, doesn't fit with someone who is assertive and like has goals the way that L3 and K2SO did. Anyway,
and I'm just saying, like, even R2D2, who is quite assertive and has goals, right? They were smart in the way that, because if it had talked and all these things, I would probably, maybe not as a kid, but in retrospect, I probably would have the similar problem, even if it didn't look human. If R2 was like all like snappy and snazzy.
I'm going to take a guess and just say that her voice and the writing that they gave that character, you just didn't like.
The look, the voice, well, the voice is fine, except that it was talking just like a human talks. Now, I don't mean tone-wise, the content of the
emotionally,
sentences.
The one thing I also didn't like about the robot design was I couldn't tell where the eyes were. Because like there are these two little lights that I thought were the eyes, but then when the droid would look at someone, it would be to the right. And so I think there was this like obscured eyeball that, you know, because like when R2D2 looks at someone, it's that big eyeball that like looks at you. And so I thought that design was a little weird.
By the way, the other thing that someone pointed out, actually that gal whose videos I like and stuff, she pointed out something very interesting. Even though it's obviously we've made commentary in the past, not just us, but just like people have made commentary about how droids in the Star Wars universe really are like, you know, being mistreated, right? Like they're not, we don't let your kind in here. Right. Which, by the way, so Star Wars was making social justice warrior points back then. No, it was, right? Like, but here's the key difference. Everyone is unaware of that situation. Like, it's almost like it's the South well before the Civil War.
No one seems to care.
No one seems to care. Now, I'm not saying that's great, but it's just that that's the state of affairs. But now we have a situation where there's this character that's a robot that's fighting for equal rights and is trying to liberate robots. And all the heroes that we grew up and love don't give a shit about that. So then her point was like, that doesn't cast a very pretty light on our heroes.
I totally buy into that, because you can totally imagine a world where you just, as a society, you just don't regard droids as people. You're just like, you're a thing, and I might care a little bit about you, but not really. And that this storyline or these events that happen around this are short-lived, or because I was wondering if like episode, or you know, the sequel to this, they would have some kind of scene where there would be some crackdown on the code of droids, where they would start taking away personality elements, you know what I mean? Some kind of, you know, talk about that or something. I don't know. But it didn't feel funny to me. But anyway.
But, well, sorry, one last thing on that is that again, this is a prequel, so it's not like this was the beginnings of a theme that later came to be the revolution of the robots and all these things. Nope, robots are always treated the same.
Well, there was that robot bounty hunter. Maybe that's one of the robots that rose up.
IGF,
you know.
Whatever, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the other things so I took notes here. Yeah, I thought Alden did a great job. I was fully expecting, particularly from people talking about it, that the actor was going to be a terrible Han Solo. I thought he did a great job, and there's just no way you're going to have a Harrison Ford alike. You have to cast a real human being, you know, and there's people who don't have time to do it, or who aren't as good of an actor, or who, you know, don't have the right hair. You know, you just have to make a lot of compromises. And so if you want to like a movie like this, you just have to go into it and say, I'm not going to see Harrison Ford. You know, I'm going to see another actor play the character of Han Solo. You know, like, for example, when I watched the cartoon, they have different voice actors for Obi-Wan and Anakin and all these other people.
And you just kind of have to make peace with that.
Yeah, you just like, well, what are the producers supposed to do? You know, track down Ewan McGregor and pay him billions? No, they have to find someone else, and it's not... He doesn't have the Alex Guinness voice. He doesn't have the Ewan McGregor voice. You just have to accept that that's the way storytelling is managed, you know? Yeah. And so when you go in, you're not going to see Harrison Ford. So get the fuck over it. And again, the writing and the directing and the acting was as good as I can imagine it ever could have been, actually, to be consistent with the Han Solo character. Now, if it bothers you that he doesn't look like Han Solo, or he doesn't seem to act enough like Han Solo to you, I challenge you to raise enough money and create a production where everyone around the world is like, man, that was so awesome. That was exactly like Harrison Ford. You nailed it. It's impossible. There's no way. So the people who criticize movies, I always just be like, so where's your fucking movie? You know what I mean? When was the last time you went out and tried to create something and tell me how many people didn't like
criticize?
Yeah, like it's you just have to accept these are human beings making human creations with a limited time and budget, and you just have to let go of certain things, you know?
Yeah.
I thought Daenerys did a great job. We should talk about this, because there's criticism about Kira and how, you know, because the main storyline is Kira and Han start off on Corellia. Yeah. They're in love, supposedly, and they're trying to get off. They're trying to, you know, free themselves from slavery and you know, poverty. And Han gets away, but Kira gets behind. And then 3 years later, they bump into each other on this gangster's ship. And there's kind of a weird scene there where Han goes up to Kira and is like, "Oh my God, you know, you're here." And Kira's just sort of stone faced, like, "Yep, good to see you, Han." And you know, Han's like, "Well, you know, what have you been up to?" And Kira's like, "Well, a lot of things." And at some point, Kira is saying something like, "Well, you know, I had to do a lot of things. I had to." And Han's like, "Well, you know, I'll still love you." And Kira's like, "You don't understand. You don't understand what I've actually had to do to stay alive, you know." And then eventually,
just become a Darth.
And then eventually, Kira, upon killing the gangster, he dies. Kira has this moment where she can either go with Han because she has the freedom to do that, or go or take over the bad organization, which is influenced because there's an ultimate bad guy who's played, you know, who is Darth Maul. Yeah. And the idea is that Kira, if Kira were to go with Han at that point, Darth Maul would somehow figure out a way to kill Kira and Han or something like that. Or maybe Kira wants power. Like the whole idea is...
I got the sense that she was a Sith apprentice. Am I wrong about... No, am I wrong about that?
You're joking.
I'm not joking.
Oh.
Like, I got the sense that this wasn't the first interaction she had with Darth Maul. I got the sense that she actually, the bad thing she was talking about is she's becoming dark. She's going to the dark side.
Well, I didn't think that could be. I mean, could be. So
well, we didn't see her have
So what do you think of that
powers.
whole story? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? The whole Kira storyline.
I didn't. No, I liked it. At first I didn't get what was happening, obviously, obviously the scene was purposeful. I do think that there might have been a weird reshoot thingy that happened where, because as part of that scene where he's talking to her, there's a moment where Han Solo says like, I've done, like, he starts explaining stuff that we've just been watching the movie, we're like, wait, why are you saying that right now? Because she just saw that. Like, I forget exactly what it was, but I felt like it was probably like a scene that had been out of order. And then they were like, well, this scene makes sense here, but then the dialogue wasn't quite exactly right. But I did think that it was an awkward scene. In some ways, it was believable because in the real world, you could see that happen where the guy's been wanting to go back and blah, finds the person, the girl, and he's super excited, but she's not.
Right. And if it was Luke, Luke would be hugging her and, yay, this is Han Solo.
Right.
He grew up on the streets. He sees himself as, kind of a scoundrel mercenary guy. And a cool guy.
Yeah.
He's cool.
He's cool.
And he bumps into Kira, and you can see it in his eyes that he's happy, but he's not going to just like throw himself, but he's also going to pursue her. But when she kind of veers away, he's going to be like, okay, well, this is interesting. But I think they should have done a little bit more in terms of the directing or the editing to recognize the gravity of that moment.
That's right.
Instead of making it so subtle that if you weren't really believing something was happening on the inside of Han and Kira in that moment, you would say like, well, that was kind of uneventful.
Right. Yeah, so I first had that feeling. I'm like, wait, what just happened? Like, his whole point is to get back to her. He randomly runs into her, and this is what's happening.
But so here's the story I got from it, and who knows where it's going to go. But the story I got from it was that she and him both were in love with each other, but they grew up on the streets and they had to resort to reality sometimes.
Yep.
That of survival, that sometimes you have to sacrifice like the perfect storybook life just so you can survive.
And were they like teenagers, like 18-year-olds or something?
Young.
I got the sense that, right? Like Han was still like maybe 18 or something.
Ish, maybe 20 or something. Yeah. And so they, but had genuine affection for each other. But at the same time on Corellia, it's like, well, we're friends and allies, let's see what happens when we get off this stupid planet. Maybe we're not made for each other, but like we're a team. Yeah. And we also love each other. That was sort of looking at the full story. I think that's how they bump in, and then, so Han goes on a journey 3 years, but it's mainly actiony and not traumatic for him. Kira, on the other hand, has something that happens where she has to, and I thought this was actually kind of darkly implied for a Star Wars movie, and I thought they did it so subtly that kids wouldn't know.
Sex slave.
Right. Yep. She had to become a sex slave.
Well, I mean, and I think there's so much precedent to that because Jabba had sex slaves.
Yeah. Yeah. He had Leia, he had that other girl, the blue-green girl that he dropped into the Rancor, and in actual chains. And so I thought that was kind of dark. I was like, whoa, for a Star Wars movie, they're implying that she was basically raped by God knows how many, men of various different races. And so that's gonna do a number on you. Yep. 1, 2, she probably thought she was never gonna see Han Solo again. Right. She was like, even if he cares to see me,
she thought he was dead.
Right. He's probably dead by now. If he did survive, he's better off just moving on in life. 3, like, what's the chance he has enough power to find me and rescue me? Like, I've got to move on. Like, I'm done. Like, Han is my childhood boyfriend. That's over. I've got to survive. I've got to stuff all my feelings of trauma. And there's this, and I'm going to cozy up to this super powerful gangster guy and be his sex slave because he can save me. And then the super powerful guy is like, well, you want to be, you know, my companion, then you've got to be a warrior too. And she's like, okay, whatever you want. And then, but she's always scheming, you know, she's not fully in bed with him mentally, but she's also like, so she's always like trying to survive, just like Han Solo, but she's a woman in this world. So it's different, right? She has to, you know, be, she has to use her skills sexually sometimes. And so she survives, and then she bumps into Han, and she's like, I can't believe you're alive. I gave up on you a long time ago. And two, she's like, if I'm going to help Han live, I have to not be nice to this guy. If I open up that side of me right now, the big gangster guy is going to see me and kill him right here in front of everybody.
Right.
So all this context is completely not stated, but I got it in that moment. When they saw each other, I was like, oh, why aren't they hugging? I was like, oh, well, actually, da-da-da. And they da-da-da. Like, okay, that all makes sense to me, but they didn't lay it out enough, like, explicitly.
Right, because I certainly, in the moment, remember thinking, ooh, she's compromised, right, in some way.
Right.
But I was more puzzled. You've actually done a good job of explaining why, because I was more puzzled about Han's reaction, because I thought, well, she's compromised, but why is he not freaking the fuck out about this?
He kind of does a little bit.
Right. But you're right that it is not Luke Skywalker, it's Han Solo.
Right. Yeah. And he's playing the long game. He's like, well, I'll work my angle. She seems a little cold, but I'll work my angle later. And he does. He tries. So then they team up and they go on a, you know, adventure together, a heist together. And the whole time, Kira is like, number one, I have to survive.
Yeah.
So because that's always been my mission. I'm not gonna kill myself trying to save Han Solo. Like, number one, me. Two, I know I always have to play my cards close to the vest because that's what's always worked for me.
Right.
Three, I do have genuine feelings for Han Solo, but they're kind of childish feelings, and my life might not be set up for that to ever. What am I gonna do? Like. Han and I are gonna, you know, ride off.
Start a family.
Go start a family, and then Darth Maul is gonna hunt me down and kill me. You know, like, you know. And so she goes along, and everything's working out. And then at the last moment, the bad guy, the mid-level management guy, dies between her and Darth Maul. And at that moment, she has this decision. She's like, okay, I can go with Han, which a part of me wants to do, and, you know, lose everything, lose money, lose my power, be on the run all the time. Darth Maul and his people will hunt me down in such a fashion because I killed the mid-level management guy. I probably crashed the ship. I completely fucked up all the, you know.
I'm a dead person.
If anyone was marked dead, I am dead, and anyone connected to me. Or I can
make up a story.
Or I can betray Han, you know, seemingly, and survive another day.
Yeah. But not really betraying Han, because she didn't, like,
kill him.
She didn't tell Darth Maul, oh, it was Han Solo, he's there, you know.
Right. She's just like, you know, moving on and appease Darth Maul. Maybe I'll find another angle at some point to get rid of Darth Maul. Right. You know, like live another day, keep your power.
Right.
You can, maybe there's another chance to come back to Han. Like, the whole thing made sense to me.
And by the way, I seriously hope, this is why I don't want there to be Solo sequels, because there cannot be any time where Han Solo sees any Force stuff at all.
Yeah. Right, because he was like, oh, that old religion.
Yeah. There cannot be a single moment of, like,
well, and they didn't in this movie. Right. Although, I mean, I guess Darth Maul could show up in a scene with Han, and
he just thinks he's a bad guy,
and just with his lightsaber and not actually use any force powers. But that would be unusual.
Yeah.
So you didn't watch the cartoon.
No.
Were you surprised to see Darth Maul?
Yeah.
I
mean, I had heard over the years through the grapevine, I had heard that he had survived and he had robotic legs.
Oh, okay.
I refused to acknowledge it because it was so annoying to think about. But I hear the cartoon is good, so whatever, right?
So the cartoon, Darth Maul. So the cartoon is like several seasons, and each season has like several episodes, and
it's called Clone Wars.
Yeah, and each episode really they do several branching off of various different plots and characters, and because there's just so many episodes to explore different areas. And one of the areas that the themes was the Darth Maul story.
I see.
And which was so satisfying because, in episode 1,
you barely get any.
Right. And the writers for the cartoon were smart to say there's so much missed potential there. Yeah. And so they totally, and so Darth Maul, when he falls down in the pit, he there's some kind of, he survives because, force power gives you a little bit more of an edge to live.
Right.
And so he's at the bottom of the pit without his legs and he's going insane. And his insanity matched up with the force creates this like weird mechanical spider body. Oh. So he's like, he's just like going insane. He's like, I've been abandoned and I was killed and I don't have legs. And he's like, I'm not giving it justice, but then his like twisted force creates this like spider body out of scrap metal, because that pit was like a scrap metal pit of some kind. And then for years he like goes insane and he's just, and he would kill things and eat things and stuff. He was just like this monster. And then but there's this whole storyline of like how he eventually kind of crawls out and then he starts to gain power and he works with I think comes back to Dooku at some point, and there's like all these double crosses and facing off of other Jedi and he has a brother at some point from the same planet. And anyway, it's just a long. So when I saw him, I was like, oh, pretty cool because of the cartoon. I guess,
I see.
Anyway.
Yeah, for me, it was quite a shocker.
Yeah.
Because when they said he reported to someone else, I actually thought it was Jabba.
Yeah.
But I don't think that would have actually made so much sense.
No, because
Jabba's like some local gangster in a totally different place.
Totally. Donald Glover did a great job.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But honestly, the way people talk about Donald Glover,
like me,
is not used per se, but like they talk about him like he's a god.
I love Donald Glover.
I love him too. He's super funny. He's
an amazing musician,
an amazing writer,
actor, producer, everything.
He can sing almost as good as Prince can sing.
Wow.
He has songs that are in that high register and are funky, and then he has like obviously rap music, which I would say his rap is like okay. The song "This Is America" isn't like an amazing song in my opinion, but the video is just like, I mean, that video will go down as like
a moment,
top 5 videos that have ever been made.
Yeah.
You got Thriller.
Yeah.
Well, what else? What other videos could you even put up there? I guess other Michael Jackson videos. I guess Nirvana, Smells Like Teen Spirit, maybe, but that's not really.
There's a Madonna video in there, right?
Yeah.
What's it called? The
Life is a mystery.
Little Prayer, right? What's it called?
What's the name? It's like a little prayer. I'm down on my knees. Like a prayer.
Like a prayer. That's what it is. Like a prayer.
A little prayer. He is a quintuple threat, that guy.
Right.
And I've seen interviews with him people are asking him like, what does the video mean? He's just like, well, you know, I made it and it's up to you to decide.
It's open to interpretation.
Yeah. And I just think he's like so smart, that guy. And so, and as Lando, I thought, you know, so no one's criticizing Donald Glover for totally not getting, what's the guy, who's the actor who played
Billy?
Billy D. Williams.
Yeah, Billy D. Williams.
Donald Glover doesn't look or act anything like Billy D. I mean, there were a couple of moments where he kind of aped him a little bit with his like, hey, smooth voice, you know? Obviously the costumes, but like the whole time I was watching the movie, I was like, that's Donald Glover.
Right.
It's not
Billy D. Young.
It's not a young Billy D. You know, But
he does become Lando.
Yeah, he's Lando. The character's fine, but I just find it's funny. Like everyone's like, Donald Glover killed it. He saved the movie, and I'm like, what?
Okay, that's not right.
And then Alden is like, he's terrible. He doesn't, you know. And I'm just like,
and that's definitely not right because I agree with you. But that said, there is the problem we're dealing with is this. Look, Batman was created as a comic book thing. So when you have different characters, actors that step up to play Batman, no one really minds that much, right? Like some aren't good, some are better, but no one's like, you can never replace the original TV Batman, Adam West, right? Like that's not a thing. Han Solo is Harrison Ford.
Right.
Harrison Ford is Han Solo.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. It's like Darth Vader's voice is James Earl Jones.
Right. And it's such a character. Like if someone did a young Luke, you probably wouldn't mind as much, you know, because
he would, because he was a young Luke. But Luke was a young Luke.
But Luke has less affectations, you know, like Han had so many
no, I mean, ultimately you are right. Everyone's precious to me, but in the end, like Han and Indy are like Harrison Ford at his best.
Yeah. I mean, so there was actually, you know, while we're talking about this again, is there was a moment where, you know, Harrison Ford in all of his movies of that era, whenever he was sort of thwarted physically, he had this face that he would make where, of course, this is an audio podcast, but I'm going to try to recreate it. It's sort of like, he'd be like,
right. You
know, he's sort of like, it's a really cartoonish, like, mealy mouth, kind of like, huh? You know, you know, like he'd get punched in the face and you go, ugh.
Right.
And like,
which by the way, is that, okay, I actually finish where you're going with.
Alden, there's one moment where Ron Howard works with Alden to make that face. I can't remember where it was. It might have been when he first meets Chewie, not sure. Yeah. But I could tell like, oh, there's that face that Harrison Ford made.
And that was what I was going to say about that is one of the things that in my mind, I don't know if he just intuitively was this good or whatever, because there's been many movies in which I didn't like Harrison Ford, right? But like one thing that I thought was so well done about both of those characters is how not perfect that they were. You know, and he wasn't afraid to make them imperfect.
Harrison
Ford. And he was allowed to make them imperfect, right? So
what do you mean, like acting imperfect, or
no? Meaning like when you're saying like a typical action hero doesn't make a face like that,
right.
A typical action hero doesn't in when he's being revived from carbonite. And he's like completely debilitated, and like a lot of actors be like, I'm not gonna be in that scene because I'm supposed to be like this big badass, and you know that's not gonna be. Yeah. But he was not afraid to like go all in and be sort of sloppy about not acting, but not sloppy acting, just a sloppy character.
Yeah, a pathetic, suffering, unheroic
nerve herder.
I loved that they gave Chewie more depth.
Yes.
When he is in the mines and he sees some of his people, they talk about how the fact he's 190 years old and wow, you look good, you know, and how important he is to the like. He was he had way more character time and development in this movie than any other movie. He wasn't just a sidekick. He was like a serious character. And I loved when Han, You know, because in the other movies, Han always understands Chewie in a way that other people don't.
Right.
And so they explain that in this movie where he's, I just thought it was so, okay, that was another thing I want to point out about this movie is like, there were many moments I was laughing out loud. In fact, I would probably say
there were funny moments. This
was the funniest Star Wars movie that's ever been made.
Really?
Like laugh out loud, funny. Like when he's, you know, in that pit and he's like getting thrown around like a rag doll by Chewie, and he's like, like, and he totally pulls it off because it sounds like a human speaking Wookiee. You know, it didn't sound like just me doing it. It's like it sounded like actual language, if that makes any sense. You know, I liked how they wrote. So when I walked out of the movie and kind of while I was watching it, the main thing I thought was I loved how they wrote this story, and I kind of already said this, in a way, because like if you make a movie about Luke, it has to be a movie about mental anguish. It has to be a movie about the Force. It has to be a movie about power. And, you know, if you make a movie about Leia, you know, it has to be a movie about politics and about saving the world. You make a movie about Han Solo, it's got to be a movie about scoundrels. Yep. It's got to be a movie about heists and stealing shit and, you know, and smuggling. Yep. And boy, did they make a movie about heists and smuggling and scoundrels. Yep. I mean, every character was a scoundrel and smuggling and the underground. Like there were so many different, there was never a moment where an X-Wing comes in and blah, blah, blah. You know, it was all very smuggly and scoundrelly, you know, and I like
Did we know that he had been part of the Empire?
No. I mean, maybe in some of the non-canon books or something, they talked about it, but no.
It didn't bother me, because it wasn't like he was, you know, brainwashed or something. He was just like, well, that's the way to get out of trouble.
Right. But and it just gives this total other weird layer, interesting layer to the Han character in the later movies where you're like,
but that's why he knows so much about things.
Right. Yeah. And how he would be like just super jaded about like how he just had to survive. It's so cynical to join the army just to survive and look for a way out at any moment, you know. Right. I also loved, and I hope you do too, when Han shot Beckett first.
Yeah, totally. That was great. And again, it's another moment in the movie that they didn't belabor.
Right.
It just happens.
Right.
And you form your own conclusions.
And if you're not a huge Star Wars fan,
it's just a moment.
It's just a moment. But to you and me, we're like, yes, he shot first, and you know, it's like, you know, that's his moment where, you know, he shows that, well, when in doubt, shoot first. You know, ask questions later. So he shot Greedo first. We all know that. Yes. I mean, and Greedo never even got his gun out of the. He never even shot his gun, right?
Nope.
Yeah. I loved how I was like waiting for like, okay, when are they going to reveal the Falcon? Because obviously, okay, Lando, you got, and then I was like, oh, you know, we already saw a big reveal in Episode 7, the most epic, awesome reveal. I mean, us in the movie theater at the Cinerama, we're just going bonkers, you know, because they're like, okay, a ship, and then boom, like, okay, well, how about this shit?
And that's trash.
The camera just pans, and you're just like, ah, and you can tell like it's a real ship, it's a real model, you know, real actual physical thing. And I thought, you know, are they going to do that? Like it was just a year and a half or 2.5 years ago. And I love that. They just sort of like, oh, here's the Falcon. I mean, it was a sort of a reveal, but it wasn't like, Papa! Right. You know, it was just, there was a lot of moments like that where.
I will say I did not like the additional escape thingy.
Though the escape pod?
Yeah.
How come?
Because
it didn't make a lot of sense to shoot it into the monster. Plus, I'm getting tired of monsters that could breathe in space.
Again, it's another. This is what I felt was the wrong direction with this movie. That if I could wave a magic wand, I would have just gone back in time and told them, hey, Just FYI, I just had a meeting with 99% of all fans out there, and we talked about it. Just to let you off the hook, we're not looking for explanations on like 99% of the stuff. Meaning, I don't need to know where he got his leather vest. I don't need to know where he got his blaster. And I don't need to know why the Millennium Falcon's got a hole in the middle.
Yeah.
I don't need to know.
Yeah.
Show us all the other great stuff you're going to show us.
Yeah,
and that's
totally.
one of those things. Like,
totally.
Why did you need to?
Was that a thing? Was that a
no?
I was
they never talked about like, where's your missing escape hatch pod?
Right. Like to me, to me when I first saw the Millennium Falcon, and I was like, oh, it has an interesting design in the front. I just thought, oh,
it's an interesting design.
Yeah, I just thought this just a modification they'll make later where they're like, it's too bulky, let's take that off. But instead, it was a little fan servicey, you know.
Yeah. And it was, in some ways, anyways, I don't want to go on too long on this, but it was just one more example of questions that we weren't asking.
Yeah. Han, I loved when Lando kept calling him Han.
Yeah, that was good. See, that's great.
Right.
That is great.
Right, because actually I didn't remember until watching this movie
that he did that.
Yeah, that in episode 5 he's like, Han, you know,
and they never correct him,
right?
Because he gave up a long time ago.
Right. Yeah, but it was like kind of subtle, but it was also in line with the plot in that. Han is always kind of looking for respect from Lando, and Lando is. And
so that is a great positive example.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't like a, retcon thing. It was just, it's just this glitch. Like he happens to call him Han and he's annoyed.
Yeah. Han.
It's like, it's Han.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Han, whatever.
Did this movie feel like a Ron Howard movie, Berto? Well, let me list some.
Yeah.
Let me list some main Ron Howard movies.
Okay.
Apollo 13, Backdraft, Beautiful Mind, Cinderella Man, Cocoon, Da Vinci Code, Far and Away, Frost Nixon, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which I watched last Christmas, In the Heart of the Sea, Parenthood, Rush, the movie about car racing, Splash, and Willow. Does this movie feel like a Ron Howard movie?
I guess no.
Yeah.
It feels like clearly he's such a skilled person that he probably was able to salvage the structure or something.
Yeah, and I think this points to something that I've come to realize more recently as I get to know more about how movies are actually made, is directors certainly play a role.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other people influencing a movie.
In fact, that's what they say about episode 4 is that the team around Lucas was the real miracle.
Right. You have people who are directing or in charge of CGI decisions. I mean, the director can't be there for every little decision. You have set design. You have script people. Right. You have the actual actors will like add their own element. Ron Howard can't walk in and just pantomime people. In fact, when they do that, it's a really awful movie. In fact, that's kind of what Lucas did to episodes 1, 2, and 3. He should have just. These are all excellent actors. You got Ewan McGregor,
right?
Even the older Anakin kid he's a good actor. Obviously, Padme, what's her face, is a great actress.
Yeah.
And anyway, the point is that I think there were a lot of elements to this movie that any director, it would have looked the same, But there were a couple moments that I could point to that I think were very Ron Howardy. One is that his brother Clint Howard was in it.
Sure, yeah, and he's in all his movies, right?
And the other one, he was the evil robot owner.
Yeah.
And the other one is that when they go to certain environments like the card games, there's a certain cartoony Ron Howardy way that it looked, the way that it was shot. Have you seen his Grinch movie?
No,
with Jim Carrey. It's very set designy, cartoony, and there were certain scenes where it definitely felt sort of cartoony. Like it didn't feel like a real world. It felt like, what's his face who did that terrible Planet of the Apes movie. And,
the one with Marky Mark?
Yeah. God, what's that kid's name? Anyway, just a sort of slightly off from reality. So I felt like Ron Howard might have brought some of that. I don't know.
Interesting.
What do you think about the sex between Lando and L3?
So was that a thing?
Yeah, I mean, they were. So
I mean, she says, "Oh, it works," or whatever.
Right, and then at a certain point, Lando somehow confirms. I mean, it's a bunch of winking, because of course it's a kids' movie, so you can't really say.
Oh no! Oh, by the way, parentheses. There were a lot of sexual innuendos in this movie, though.
Yeah.
So like, I forget the whole list, but when they're first introducing Lando, she's like, and let's not forget about his prodigious, and then he cuts off, which she meant to say cape collection, but and then there were others like when I forget, but there were at least, I got like at least 3 like big obvious innuendos and stuff. Okay, so anyways, about L3. Well, then that was one of them where they have that conversation. No, I hate it. I hate all of that. Like, burn it with fire.
Yeah, there's so many weird things about that doesn't make any sense. That it's like, why was that written into it?
Now it just makes me think that Lando and Lobot were a ship.
Right. I mean, everyone loves a good ship relationship.
By the way, I can't believe I'm starting to say that. I hate that.
but one, like, how does it work? I mean, she was a very clunky machine, so we're led to believe that she somehow knows how to work a penis. That's
it
weird.
Works.
Yeah, and then the other thing is like, Lando has some kind of weird fetish for slave droids.
Which makes it even worse.
We're led to believe that Lando has sex with his droids,
with his slave droids.
Yeah, like
it's just weird, man.
And what
so unnecessary.
Like, it was. I didn't like it at all. No. Some people. So I just have to say, when the podcasts I listen to about movies, there are people who love L3 and wanted more and more and more of L3. Okay. Other bad things that I would say, again, big butt on L3. That was weird. 20 minutes too long, as a lot of movies are.
Yeah. Okay. So it did feel, there was a moment in which I was like, oh, it's weird that it's going to end here. And then it kept going.
Yeah. The rebellion twist, as I said at the end, was distracting and boring and completely uneventful to me. Yeah. Like when she takes her helmet off, I'm like, oh, what? And then,
by the way, a lot of people are giving the movie credit for it's making a point about indigenous people and stuff like that, but they're saved by a white dude.
Well, that and it's such, like, when you add up all the plots of what should be a fairly simple story, because we're not talking about the savior of the galaxy, we're talking about just these little heist people, that this is like plot line number 15.
Yeah.
And it really drags at the end and really distracts from some pretty complex character moments in the plot between Beckett and Han and Kira.
And I absolutely. I thought that what I was hoping was that we had seen the last of them.
Right.
Because it was a cool scene with the heist, and then they almost get away with the thing and stuff. I was pretty sure that wasn't, because I had seen the scene in the preview where the main girl is standing there, and in the preview you don't know it's a girl or anything, but that character standing there in the sand or whatever it is, and you're like in the beach, and you're like, okay. So I knew it was coming back, but I was just like, okay, well, fine. So we'll see the final confrontation with this. But yeah, then it added this whole other...
Yeah.
You should come join the rebellion.
Yeah. It was hilarious when Han tries to bluff. He's like, we got a whole bunch of soldiers down there, and then Lando just takes off.
That is a good Han moment.
Right.
Because Han runs into these problems a lot. Where he's like, we're having trouble here with the... You know what?
Right, and it highlights that everyone in this section of the galaxy is... out for themselves. Right.
Yeah. There's very little loyalty among thieves.
I also, going back to things I didn't like the Kessel Run.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah, like there were elements of the Kessel Run I liked, but when one, you got a monster that flies in space. That's never a good thing. And,
well, but you know, they've had the worm in space.
But I just get rid of that. Just get rid. Like in the cartoon, they also have these flying like whale type characters, and it's like, you know, it's hard. I suspend a lot of disbelief.
Sure.
But it's hard for me to suspend belief to the point where you have animals that can float in space.
Near what was that? A black hole? A maw? It was a black hole, right? Wasn't it?
It's like there's so many other ways you could have written into there being a problem, that they would have to overcome.
Yeah, I agree.
Other than a monster. Also, my problem with the Kessel Run, especially at the climax of it, was I didn't really understand the mechanics.
Oh, absolutely. They didn't go over what was ultimately what he did, right? Because they figured out, well, if he goes to his more risky path, right? But I always assumed that the Kessel Run, and it was a missed opportunity, because I always assumed that it was something that sort of got notoriety, right? Because he said, like, this is the ship that did the Kessel Run. And now, granted, Luke had never heard of it, but I figured, well, Luke doesn't know anything. I figured that because Han was saying that.
But you could say he's saying that as a arrogant thing that no one cares about. But, anyway.
Yeah, but okay. But I didn't expect that it was to the point of like only 2 people know about it.
Yeah.
Right. I thought it was like, so what I thought that was going to happen in the movie was some sort of competition or something. And in the end, there's a big cheering for, oh, I can't believe he did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs or whatever, right? And obviously that would be cheesy if they just did that. But instead, it really is underwhelming. And I guess, you could write it off as like, well, that's the point. Han brags about this unrelated random thing. But I don't know, it's sort of disappointing.
And they, again, so when I saw it, I liked the fact that they worked the Kessel Run, quote unquote, into a plot point. But looking back, it's like you could have made it really anything.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other plot sort of scene. They could have cut like 10 minutes out of that thing.
And by the way, there's something I really didn't like about it, which is that my understanding is that it's because the Millennium Falcon is such a cool ship that he was able to fly the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, right?
Which is basically what they're saying.
But they're not. The only reason it worked is because they added the little extra minerals.
And they had L3, who is...
but so with the L3 part, I'm okay, because, so they supplemented the AI. But it's not like they have these minerals every other time.
Right.
Right? So the fact that basically it was like a nitrous boost for your...
But in a sense, it would have to be something kind of odd, because there's presumably millions upon millions of ships in this galaxy.
Yeah.
The fact that you could claim that one of those ships managed to just like make some very rare,
That's what makes the Millennium so special.
But why? Because it's not a special ship, really.
It is the fastest in the galaxy.
Well, that's what he says, And
it seems to outrun everyone else.
It does hyperdrive like anyone else does, And you couldn't possibly claim that some junker is "quote unquote" faster. You know what I mean?
You know what though? But I mean, my childhood fantasy was that in fact the Millennium is the coolest ship.
But what instead they're saying, which I think is a better story, is that the heart and the drive and the teamwork of the crew is really what made,
and drugs. They're telling us that drug enhancements is the key.
All those things,
So bring back Lance Armstrong.
There's nothing like a little.
Lance Armstrong.
But did you understand what was happening during that scene? Like, I knew they had to shoot this particular shot that L3 was trying to get, but that whole thing, like, so there's fog that they can't, that's bad for the ship.
Right.
And I don't know. I was like,
it was confusing.
There was a lot of elements to that. And they could have cleaned that up a little bit, just made it a little bit more simple.
Right.
Like all you had to do was like here they come the TIE fighters, we got to get the fuel in. Oh no, turn it around. Like you just make it more like, again, episode 4, there's no scene like that. You're in a trash compactor and you're going to get trashed, compacted, but somehow R2, you know, or C-3PO had to get away because, you know, the guards are coming, and then when the guards leave, he turns back on his communicator, and he's like, "Oh my God, they're the thing," you know, like it's very there's nothing to figure out, you know. There's no like massive
as an audience member, you're fully following what's happening,
right?
Unless you're 5 or 3, but otherwise you're fine.
Yeah, and so the whole Kessel Run plot, when I was watching it, I was like, "Wait, what is happening?" Some say, a lot of people are saying it's too dark and foggy, like shot wise, like it's.
I don't think so.
A lot of people are saying that. Really? Yeah, I didn't notice that. I'd have to watch it again to see, but a lot of people were like, it's too dark. I couldn't tell what was happening. And I'm like,
I
really?
did not have that problem.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the theater. I watched it in a good theater, but.
Well, apparently it's a new criticism to a lot of movies where they will go to, like, I think the DC movies are criticized for this, where it's just
that's true. They do.
It's like too actual darkness. Like you gotta raise the brightness on your computer, you know. Another criticism that I don't agree with, that some critics were saying was, and they all agreed on this one podcast, they were saying, you know, we didn't really need this movie. You know, they're like, you know, no one was asking. You kind of said this earlier.
I say that too.
As like a criticism about the fact that the movie was made, you know?
Well, I mean, that part, I do tend to agree. Like, okay, let me put it this way. It is true that I don't think any fans were like, you know, the one movie, if they just made a solo prequel, you know, and at the same time.
But I think some fans were kind of wishing, you know.
Maybe, but here's what is true. They didn't fundamentally like change, and this is maybe not a bad thing, but they didn't fundamentally change our understanding of his character.
Right. They fleshed it out. Yeah,
but then. So, like, if this movie didn't exist, it wouldn't really change anything.
Right, but to me, I don't understand that criticism, because we didn't need Rogue One, and that was a great movie.
And I think people criticized it a bit because of that, too.
The other thing is like, we don't need any fucking movies. There's not a single... Aside from documentaries that are helpful to our society, there's not a single movie that needs to be made.
I do hear you on that. I think... I don't know if it's everyone, but one of the people I was listening to a video that they were complaining about this. I think there's a segment of fans that are waiting for them to tell new stories, right? They want new stories, totally new stories.
Like they're like, if you're going to spend the money in the budget, spend it on X, Y, and Z.
Expand the universe kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, okay.
Like there's some fans that want... and I don't know how I feel about this, but there's some fans that want the Knights of the Old Republic movies, you know?
Yeah. I feel like I've heard a lot of, and, you know, as a Knights of the Old Republic game person, I like the world, but to me, like, it would be so far afield from the touchstone characters that you're basically just like
telling it. In fact, that's the one criticism I had. I mean, I understand why they did it, because it totally freed them to tell the story. But if I stood back, if it were a movie, it probably wouldn't have worked, because it was so foreign and fake that 1,000 years prior, it was the same thing.
Yeah.
Same characters. I mean, not literally the same characters, but like same type of characters, same type of robots, same type of technology. Everything was the same.
Right.
And you could say, well, yeah, in space, time moves funny. But it was weird, right?
Which, I mean, given that this world and its technology is so weird to begin with, you know, they don't have nukes.
Yeah.
Their lasers are actually like akin to bullet technology of the 40s in America.
No, but it's fair.
So I don't have a problem with that. But
they're always making progress, because they're building a Death Star and they're building a bigger Star Killer base. And, you know?
True. But to me, it's like, if I'm not interested in a Knights of the Old Republic movie at all. I'm not either. You know, if they do, I'll watch it and I'll like it, but I'm not gonna feel like super like, I wonder what happened back then. It's like, I don't know, like lots of shit happened in thousands of years prior to the new, you know. Well, let's think about what movies we would like to see. Would you like to see Han Solo sequels?
No.
Well, I think you're the same as a lot of people, particularly given the numbers. Because they had planned 3 of these movies,
right? But I don't mean I don't want to. I don't not want them because I didn't like the movie, because I did like the movie.
You'd rather have other things.
I mean, first of all,
like what? What would you rather?
Well, sorry, really quick. I didn't ask for a yearly Star Wars movie.
Oh, I did.
Right? I didn't. But if you're going to give me a yearly Star Wars movie, then I guess I do want to maybe start learning new things. And so if we're going to learn new things, I feel it's too constraining. Like a Boba Fett movie? Like, I don't want a Boba Fett movie. That character's got no lines. That character's not...
Yeah, well, so I've been thinking about what I would love a Boba Fett movie to be like. And maybe after the Han Solo tanked in the box office, they're seriously rethinking not making a Boba Fett movie. But what I would love about a Boba Fett movie was he never talks, he never takes his helmet off.
Okay. Or barely talks.
And barely talks, right. He starts the movie, there's no love
action.
There's no love story.
Okay.
Have you seen Dredd, the more recent Dredd movie?
No, but I've heard it's great.
It is so good, Berto. You have to watch it. It is like a instant classic.
Okay. I think I like where you're going
Dredd,
with this.
He never takes his helmet off.
It's a Mad Max kind of experience.
Right.
Adrenaline rush.
Right.
And
he's in the ship. There's no fan service. Yeah.
Badass.
He's a bounty hunter. He interacts.
I love it.
Right?
Okay, now you got me.
Right.
Okay.
And you could imagine with the intelligence of these writing and directing, you could imagine that they would consider it,
But my fear is that it's going to become a little character.
Right.
Like, I know I didn't talk in the other movies, but I'm really quippy now.
But I feel like Kathleen Kennedy is smart enough and the team around her is smart enough to actually read the internet.
She ruined everything she's touched.
I feel like one thing that the movie producers have done in the last 5 years is they fucking pay attention to the internet now. Like the Avengers movies, I feel are the reason why they don't have major problems is because they really pay attention to what's being said about them, and the writers rework stuff. It's like, oh well, we were gonna do this, but everyone hated this in the last movie on the internet, so we're gonna it's just it's this automatic market research, and I feel like anyway, but. So I would love a movie like that if they pull it off.
Well, like the other one is that I wouldn't have asked for an Obi-Wan movie, but now I'm feeling like, okay, maybe you need to repair my relationship with Ian McGregor's Obi-Wan, if you made a good one. But I don't know.
No, I feel like, for me anyway, Obi-Wan and Anakin are the stars of the cartoon.
Yeah.
And I have seen those characters fleshed out ad nauseum.
Okay, so then we don't need that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is look, just finish telling the new trilogy.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, that would be great. So they're going to
rest. Let me rest.
Well, they're going to make another trilogy with Ryan.
Oh my god! With what?
Ryan, the guy who did this episode 8.
Oh my god!
So, and what I think it's going to be is it's going to be based on
those stupid side stories.
The kids in the
and it's going to have the collector, and it's going to have It's going to have the
Phasma.
Probably, but it's going to have what's that guy that they never got to talk to? That's a famous actor,
right? Anakin, or not Anakin, but Aniston's husband. I can't remember.
Yeah, from American Psycho. Justin,
Justin something.
Who, by the way, that lawyer in that outburst on tape recently, or that lawyer that was yelling like, you were speaking Spanish and blah, blah, blah in the restaurant.
Okay.
He looks a lot like Justin.
So
Thoreau or something. Justin Theroux.
No. So what would I like to see? Yeah, I'm looking forward to episode 9, obviously. I'm actually interested in what Ryan does with his trilogy.
I don't know, man. If it's anything like the Casino movie, I don't know.
I don't think it will be. I think he forced that in to set up his trilogy against his better judgment because he felt like he had to or something. You know, you needed some connection to the main trilogies to kind of justify this offshoot. Let's see. I wouldn't mind a movie. So that you know, the TV show is coming out like in a couple years.
What TV show?
There's a Star Wars TV show.
What?
Yeah.
God damn it! No, I'm done. I need rest. I'm tired of superhero movies. I'm tired of Star Wars movies. I need a rest.
I think it's gonna
sleep.
I think it's gonna be like a short season, like Game of Thrones kind of deal. You know, that's my guess. High, you know, expensive episodes, and they're gonna take place just after Endor, like 7 years after Endor. So it's in between episodes 6 and 7, and it'll be a TV show about. I guess we won't know. It'll have all new characters. Like they're not gonna have like, it's not gonna be Han and Luke. They might have like cameos maybe or something, but it's gonna be about a whole new set of characters. Yeah, it could be disastrous. But if it's half good, I'll watch the shit out of it. You don't want to watch it?
I'm sure I'll watch it. Like, all I'm saying is, one of the things that made Star Wars so epic and real feeling is that it was 3 well-made, well-told stories and a whole bunch of toys. And then we had to deal with our imagination the rest of the time. But now imagine you're a kid, you barely have any time to play and process because there's a new one, there's a new thing, there's another cartoon, there's another...
Kids today.
Kids these days.
They have all these movies.
Like, we had 3 years in between movies to process and play and absorb and imagine.
Yeah, it's true. And we had our little figures and our pen and paper. But no, I you know, there's still, the universe is so big in the Star Wars universe. That's why I like the world so much. Lord of the Rings, the same thing. There's so many different angles. And again, I've watched the cartoon like 2 or 3 times through. It is you know, just like the TV show that they're going to make. It's, you know, episodic about characters that you don't even know.
Yeah.
You know, there's actually like clone troopers. There's clone troopers that I know.
Yeah.
Like Fives and, you know, all these other characters that you don't even know that they invented for the cartoon, whom I really care about, you know, like they did Darth Maul, for example. Like, I have a very complicated relationship with Darth Maul because he's a very complicated character, and you're just like, oh, he's that guy who died in episode 1.
Right. That's funny because, you know, in other things, in other IPs, other franchises, like Star Trek, take Star Trek, right? If you're a hardcore Star Trek fan, the range of between all the movies and all the TV shows and everything, the range of the canon is huge, right? There's so many characters, so many things. But to a what do you call a casual Star Trekkie? A cash Trekkie, like me, I really appreciate Star Trek because it's simple.
But how often do you watch it?
No, that's what I'm saying. To me, it's simple. It's only a couple of people in a ship in one series. Yeah. I barely even acknowledge Picard. Like, you know, it's easy.
You didn't watch Next Generation?
Barely at all.
Oh my God.
I mean, I saw a couple of the movies.
So when Next Generation came out on TV, you didn't watch it?
It was playing on TV when I switched the channel.
Man, when Next Generation was on TV, me and all my friends were I think it was Sunday night. I think the episodes strangely came out on Sunday night, if I remember correctly.
I mean, I think we talked a little bit about this. How, for me, the magic that I felt when I watched the original Star Trek was not there at all with the new stuff, because the old one looked like so foreign and so alien, and the music and the look of it. And it was like, wow, I'm really looking at what this would be like for real. With Star Trek, The Next Generation was like a set with people with modern sounding music and light and bright. And it's like, oh, this is boring.
Man, I loved
and it
Next
felt like
Generation.
Doogie Howser.
Yeah. In fact, Drain loves Next Generation.
Okay.
And he's trying to convince me to rewatch it because I haven't watched but maybe a couple episodes in the past like 15 years, and I also loved Deep Space Nine, actually.
Yeah.
But anyway. All right, Berto, what's the final word?
I liked Solo, or I should say, I liked Alone. Lonely. I will hold to my 7, but I really enjoyed it, and I was pleasantly surprised because I really thought I was going to hate it.
Yeah, it was a good ride. I mean, all of our negativity or all of our analysis, I think, is really just nitpicky and analysis.
Yes.
To me, it's like it's a good ride. It moves pretty fast.
And unlike, I know, but unlike episode 8, in episode 8, I did have moments where I was like, I am not enjoying this. I am not enjoying this. I didn't have those moments.
Right. It's like the things you didn't like were
moments, little micro moments.
Or a character that didn't really
decisions
resonate.
That I did.
Yeah, but the rest of it, like that whole mining scene where L3 plays a pretty big role. There's a lot of things happening. You got Chewie, you got like lasers, and you got like escapes.
So even if you don't like a little line here or there, and even the things I didn't like that were like how he got his blaster and stuff like that, it just bugs me. But it didn't add or subtract much at all.
Yeah, it was real fast. Beckett just he breaks down his rifle and he gives him this gun, and So the last thing I should say is that Woody Harrelson, I thought, did a great job. Sort of a right down the middle performance.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed him.
Yeah,
but I usually do. He's usually playing himself.
And I liked the idea that Han Solo had a mentor who double-crossed him, and Han had to kill him to save himself. Luke has a mentor like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Right. Han has a different
kind of mentor.
And it's great because sometimes in movies they'll set it up where because at first Beckett paid no attention to him. In fact, he was abandoning him. He already double-crossed him to begin with.
Right.
He threw him to the wolves.
Yeah.
He literally threw him to get killed.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
So there's no love lost from the beginning. Yeah. And then in a quote unquote more standard storytelling, after that initial bad start, then they really bond and then they're friends forever. And instead, no, he's still a scoundrel. He still threw him to the wolves.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the only advice he has don't trust anybody.
Don't trust anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Good movie, entertaining, and just sit back and watch it. And, enjoy your life, people.
Yep.
That does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Thanks for joining us out there. Please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.
You have no solo kind of...
May the deservedness be with you and also with you.